On today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, it is a trade deadline live reaction show special with me and your boy, Steele Roden.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome to a very, very special episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Big Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden. Steele, my boy, is right out of the College of Sports Media, and you can find his work on all platforms under NHL Quick Hits. He is the DFS guru. I'm your boy, Big Flip Livingstone, and you have seen my work on the platforms such as The Score and CBC, Hockey Night in Canada, and plenty more. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it. It is a special episode where we will be taking a deep look into all of the action from NHL trade deadline day. It has already been a busy one. We will be breaking down trades and talking to local experts from all of your teams to keep you up on the action. And of course, breaking things down from a fantasy and betting angle. We are excited to be here, part of the Locked On Fantasy Network. Thank you for being here. Steele, this is a special episode, and I'm obviously fired up for it. Lots of trades trickling in, lots of moves. There's a lot to talk about, my friend.
There is a lot to talk about. I think we're definitely going to be starting in the Atlantic Division. The top four teams in the Atlantic Division have made some serious trades, some serious additions to make their team better. And for me, probably the most dangerous division heading into the playoffs. Right. With the next 20 games, the next 20 regular season games going, but heading into the playoffs, these four teams are going to be very dangerous. We're going to all four of them. We're going to look at some of the biggest trades of the day, especially coming out west from the Minnesota Wild in the second segment. But I think we really have to start off with probably the best team that has made the best trades for their team, the Florida Panthers. They are looking stacked right now.
Florida Panthers, Boston Bruins, Tampa Bay Lighting, even the Toronto Maple Leafs all made significant moves, but I think you're spot on. The Florida Panthers, we talked about a lot in the lead up to the deadline, already looking like a Stanley Cup team. And what do? They go out there and arguably add the two biggest trade target names, at least the rental target in Claude Giroux. That's a big add. The team, we talked about it. The team was already beastly from top to bottom, only concern maybe in net. What do? They go out and bolster their entire lineup. This team might not be the odds-on cup favorite. They're just behind the Colorado Avalanche, but I think they deserve to be right there, Steele, and boy, are they starting to look dangerous.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to get into the Stanley Cup odds later in the show. We'll digest a little bit, sprinkle some money on which teams, who has the best odds right now. But you're right. Mm-hmm. The fact that they were able to go out and get Ben Chiarot, help them on the back end, especially with Aaron Ekblad out of the lineup right now with injury. Hopefully he'll be back soon, healthy. But as well to go out and get Claude Giroux. There were rumors out there. Maybe they were true, but apparently Colorado, New York, and Boston have had all sent trades to Philadelphia, but they honored Claude Giroux's wishes that he wanted to go to Florida, and they said no, we're not sending him over to Boston and New York. So it was only Florida and Colorado on the table. But the fact that Florida was able to get Claude Giroux for what they gave up, Owen Tippett, a first and a third round pick, and they got Giroux, a fifth round pick, and two prospects in return, that is a huge win for the Florida Panthers.
Huge win for what's already, a disgusting looking cup caliber lineup when you just have a quick glance at it. And honestly, if I'm the rest of the Atlantic Division, I'm a bit shook, especially if I'm the Boston Bruins and Toronto Maple Leafs, because I think the Florida Panthers clearly just announced to the rest of the division and the league that we're here and we're going for it. And, like I just said, if I'm those other teams in the Atlantic and even the rest of the league, I've definitely, taken notice in a very, very big way, Steele.
Yeah, and, them sitting at the top of the division, they have home ice advantage as well. So it's going to be a big, big swing for the Florida Panthers. let's get the Locked On Panthers host Armando Velez out here so he can help us digest some of the trades. Armando, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Just wrapped up
doing
my live show and then jumping on here, just going back and forth and just refreshing the Twitter for all the moves made and possibly ones that could leak after. George Richards of Florida Hockey Now said that the Florida Panthers are done with their trades, that Bill Zito will be walking down to the media room as we speak. So it looks like that the Florida Panthers are done, barring anything else.
Yeah, I would
you
say
look
that
extra
they
happy
are
over
done
there.
Yeah, they should be done, but who knows, really? Who knows? Hey, crazier things have happened, but I think if you're a Florida Panthers fan, you are sitting in a very happy state right now. I think you would have already been before. You know, Armando, we talked a lot about on this show how balanced the Florida Panther team already was, and they go out and add these two major pieces. But what I want to know from you, actually, before we talk about anything trade-wise, is the smaller trade they had to make to beef up the back end a little bit more with Aaron Ekblad being out with injury. What do you think this means for the team down the stretch, and when do you see him coming back? What are the reports saying?
Well, they say 5 to 7 weeks as far as the recovery. So 5 to 7 weeks, we're talking about maybe just before the playoffs. But I mean, of course, with cap related stuff, we're seeing that maybe he could start practicing a week or two before game one of the first round. And of course, they use that LTIR space to trade for Robert Hagel of the Buffalo Sabres for a 6th-round pick, a pick that they got from the Sam Bennett trade last year. So that 6th-round pick was one that they acquired. And of course, the moving around of the assets that weren't theirs. I mean, from the Sam Bennett trade last year to get Haig, the Frank Vitrano trade this time around to get a piece like a Ben Chiarot, moving that to a different spot. But also one thing that's not talked about is, as far as these trades go, is the fact that Bill Zito is able to make some of these top 10 protected for the Florida Panthers. I mean, the trade this year to Buffalo for Sam Reinhart, it's not going to be in the top 10, but we have the trade over to Montreal that is top 10 protected, and the one to Philly. So if things go wrong for the Florida Panthers next year, those picks that those other teams traded for, it's going to be a little delayed in their timeline when they get to reap the benefit of the picks. Of course, people in Florida Panther land don't wish that. Of course, they are billed to be a contender for many years, but also the reason why they went for it is because money troubles coming up with Keith Yandel's buyout. A majority of it will be on next year. Sergei Bobrovsky's contract is still a big cap hit on the team. Barkov's new deal is going to be hitting next year, the first year of that extension.
Huge.
Huberdeau's extension, if he were to get extended, won't kick in until the year after. So they got to prepare for a little bit. It'll be Mackenzie Weegar's last year of his deal. So they got a little bit of cap stuff coming up. So that's why they said this is the year.
Well, thank God they're making this the year. And all you Florida Panther fans are probably super ecstatic right now, especially with that big deal for Claude Giroux on the top line. He's going to be playing alongside Alexander Barkov. How do you feel about that trade? If it were me, I'd be out of my seat, jumping up ecstatically right now.
This whole time I've said that Claude Giroux being added to the Florida Panthers has always been a bonus. This isn't a deal that they necessarily had to make. And many people around Florida Panthers circles, the goal, number one goal, was always to get a middle pairing defenseman. And Claude Giroux was always going to be a bonus. So the fact that they got that bonus, it's the icing on the cake. I mean, he led the Philadelphia Flyers in power play time on ice, so he's going to be a contributor to that power play. We don't know what unit it's going to be, but with the experience, I think when the playoffs go around, he's going to be on that top pair, because that experience is something that you have to put out there, especially where we've seen him score big goals in the playoffs. I mean, he helped the Philadelphia Flyers get all the way to the Stanley Cup final in 2010. Of course, fell short. But of course, you get that experience. I mean, of course, with experience in Joe Thornton as well, Patrick Hornquist as well, just to name a few. So it's a big mix of all these experienced players who have been to the final and fallen short, and then of course one who won it all, and the experience of the core three of Barkov, Huberdeau, Ekblad.
Hey, it's a beautiful looking core, and really it's now on the Florida Panthers to put up or shut up, because their front office has done their side of things. Armando, you've done your side of things. Thank you so much for hopping on today and providing some really awesome insight for the Florida Panthers. I wish you luck down the stretch. I hope these moves pay off. I think they will, definitely from a fantasy perspective. Stay tuned for some more breakdown on that. Stay tuned for lots more guests. But Armando, thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of today.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me.
Well, Steele, there you have it, my friend. This is an exciting little format. YouTube Live. Thank you for being here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast Trade Deadline Reaction Special. We are talking about the Atlantic Division at this point. A little bit of an arms race going on. That is for sure. Steele, let's talk about a team who maybe didn't be as active as some fans would like, definitely in the Toronto market. Let's talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs with our next local Locked On host, who I know is excited to talk about today. There he is. He's here. It's Mr. David Morasuti of the Locked On Leafs podcast, I believe a fellow graduate of Centennial Sports Media College.
Hey,
there he is.
Right now.
Shout out the Centennial Mafia for all of you out there. And listen, the Toronto Maple Leafs have always got the looking glass on them. We always, under the big media bubble, they make one big move. They make a couple of interesting smaller moves, even in the net. So I say we start with, what do you think the trade grade, overall grade of the day is for Kyle Dubas? What do you? I'm switching it up for David because I know he's serious. What kind of grade does Kyle Dubas get for today?
I mean, for today, it's more so maybe what they didn't do. I'm kind of go with a C because I felt like with the injury to Rasmus Sandin,
right,
and you look at that the upfront, the uncertainty of Andre Kasha and things like that. The Leafs are going to have to hope for a lot to go right for them from now until the end of the season. It's really tough. Look, Giordano, great addition. He brought up Lyubushkin from a few weeks ago, another good addition for the blue line. But other than that, like up front, he's banking on what he has, and it just shows how limited he was going into this deadline.
Well, you talk a little bit about the uncertainty of Andre Kasha, and for me, in that Seattle Kraken trade, a very underrated player is called Blackwell. The fact that we were able to get him as well, I think he would fit in very, very nicely on the right wing side on the fourth line, playing with Jason Spezza and Wayne Simmons potentially. But I think he's a very underrated player. He's 28 years old, 29 years old, I believe. So I think the fact that we were able to get Mark Giordano and Colin Blackwell for two second round picks and a third pick, and being able to 50% Seattle retaining 50% of Giordano's salary was pretty solid in my opinion.
It's not bad. What do you think, David?
That deal I didn't have any issues with, really. And the Blackwell edition could prove to be a very underrated one in that regard. I do think that they were looking for something for that fourth line because it has looked stale at times. Jason Spezza has been in and out. Wayne Simmons has been in and out. Even Kyle Clifford, they tried that and it just didn't work. And Nick Robertson has proven he's not a fourth line guy. He needs to be with, I feel he's at his best when he's on that second line. So maybe that's something they consider again down the road. But no, I think Colin Blackwell can solidify himself in that fourth line. I think if he can bring an offensive presence to that line, it'll be a bonus there for the Leafs. It'll be kind of like the cherry on top of that Giordano trade.
Here's my thing. We're talking about Blackwell. We're talking about these minor down the lineup impacts. We're talking about the rest of this division loading up.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit concerned, even if I wasn't a diehard Leafs fan, just from the outside looking in, and I'm both. So I look at it like this, David. If they get bounced in the first round again, which I would say on paper right now, after the teams we know they're likely going to have to face, it's going to be tough for them to get out of this first round. If they don't get out of the first round, where do they go from here? What happens? Front office, behind the bench, or do you trade one of the big five? And big five, obviously, JT, the guys we know to talk about. But let's hear what you have to say before we have to jump on to the next guest.
Yeah, I think for the Leafs, really, if they don't make it out, this is going to be on, Brendan Shanahan asking Kyle Dubas, are you willing to break up this core and make a significant upgrade, change there? Because if not, I think that will be, Kyle Dubas has been so loyal to this group that if he's not willing to make that move, I think Brandon Shanahan will find someone that will do it, because you cannot do nothing if you fall out early this year.
I totally agree. Steele, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I really like what Kyle Dubas has done, but I think you're both right here. If he's not the guy that is willing to part ways with, the top 4, the top 5s, if you're including Morgan Rielly, then Brendan Shanahan's definitely going to have to, consider moving on from Kyle Dubas.
Yep, most definitely. And I think we're on the same page with David. David, thank you so much for jumping on, my friend. Good to see you. Shout out Centennial Mafia. And I hope the Leafs have some magic in the tank for, just from an overall entertainment perspective. But thanks for jumping on, my friend. Have a great day.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Hey, man, it's the Leafs are in tricky. We talked about this even before the deadline moves. Sure, Giordano's, everyone loves talking about underlying metrics now. Does that just mean like what he does the little things? He does the little things well, and I think it's a good ad for sure. I don't think it's enough, even when the Bruins are making the moves like they are, Steele.
Yeah, the Bruins, they haven't been as active as the Florida Panthers, the Leafs, the Tampa Bay Lighting, even in the division, but they made a couple of big moves and a big signing as well. Let's get on Locked On Bruins host Ian McLaren here to help us digest some of the trades. Ian, thank you so much for being on here with us and helping us, kind of sort through the trades and the signings that Boston has made.
No problem.
Hampus
How's it going?
Lindholm, it's going very good. We're sitting here seeing all of the trades that are happening.
Yep.
Hampus Lindholm for picks John Moore as well as another prospect. How do you even digest that and the fact that they signed him for 8 years already?
I mean, that kind of makes the deal a bit more palatable. The fact that they're not giving up all those assets for a rental. It's a guy that they see as part of the core for the next 8 years. It's only him and McAvoy who are signed, very long term. They both can become free agents in like 2030 or something ridiculous like that. They see him as a mainstay in the top 4. From what he's saying, he's very happy to be a Boston Bruin. It sounds like he's wanted to be a Bruin for a little bit now. So it seems like, kind of a perfect match at the moment for the Bruins without having him, appear for the team yet. So we'll see how he fits in. But on paper, it's a nice match for sure.
And that's the move they did make, Ian. And I know you've been talking a lot about the need for some up-the-middle, second-line center help on this team. That's one of the clear needs. So maybe let's talk about the deal they didn't make. We saw early in the day they signed Jake DeBrusk, people maybe indicating that was maybe a stumbling block to getting a deal done. Trade request not rescinded. Lots of news around DeBrusk, and he ends up not getting moved unless something crazy happens here, which is probably too late to happen, but you never know. Do you think that was maybe, a missed opportunity to maybe bolster their lineup for what I know you think they really need, especially for, they're going to be pushing for a good playoff spot here.
Yeah, I've kind of been of two minds about this. I think the second line center, obviously that's been a huge hole since David Krejci decided to go home and play in his native Czechia. But at the same time, the decision to bump David Pastrnak down to the second line has kind of made it where perhaps it doesn't matter who plays with Taylor Hall and David Pastrnak down the middle. You don't need an offensive force per se, just a guy who's steady, responsible, who can chip in occasionally.
Yep.
It used to be Krejci had no wings. Now they've got the wings. Just plug somebody in there and see what happens. So far, it's been working out. They wanted to do a kind of center by committee thing this season. Charlie Coyle was expected to be the second line guy.
Right.
He's fitting in on the third line pretty well. And I guess they're going to roll with the more concerning thing for me is just having DeBrusk on his off wing. I'm not a huge fan of that, but he's been playing pretty well up there so far in limited time. So we'll see if it continues here down the stretch.
The amount of confidence Ian has in his voice right now makes me feel good as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan because things are uncertain for the Boston Bruins.
Yeah.
That's a hot take I'm taking away from this one. Ian McLaren, formerly of The Score, friend of the show and host of Locked On Bruins. Thank you for being here today, Ian, and good luck down the stretch, my friend.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
Steele, we're rolling now, my friend. We're rolling now.
Oh yeah.
Like, honestly, at the end of the day, I don't think Boston did enough, but we
No,
know
they
the
didn't.
bias. The bias is thick here. So
Yeah. Yeah, they did. I don't think they did enough. I think they got their guy in Hampus Lindholm. I think signing him for 8 years, and he's happy to be there. All things considered, great for him, great for the organization. I think they were like, even though they signed Jake DeBrusk, I still believe that he wants a trade to be done. He wanted to be dealt before the deadline. So he's still in Boston for 2 years. Something might happen, but again, I don't think they did enough. And I think the way the Atlantic Division is kind of lining out, in the actual standing wise, kind of proves what happened for the deadline as well. Like Florida Panthers went all out and they're in the top position. They're in first in the Atlantic. Tampa Bay, they made a big move, just one big move, and they got Brandon Hagel and a couple of draft picks as well. So that's why they're in second. Toronto, again, did one big move, got Mark Giordano. They needed someone on the defensive side to help them out. That's why they're in third in the standings. And Boston Bruins are in fourth. They didn't do much, but they got their guy on the blue line. So we'll see what happens. But let's talk about that Tampa Bay Lightning trade. Brandon Hagel and two fourth-round picks for 2 first-round picks, Taylor Radish and Boris Tkachuk. Brandon Hagel, 21 goals, 37 points on the season. He's only owned at 12% in fantasy leagues, 360 fantasy points on the season. They also go out and acquire Nick Paul from the Ottawa Senators for Matthew Joseph and a pick as well. And I've already looked at Daily Faceoff. I've looked at the lineup combinations. Both Brandon Hagel and Nick Paul are going on the third line, and that third line with Ross Colton centering them looks a lot better. And I already there's nothing I would change with their fourth line. I think their fourth line is absolutely amazing. That third line looks incredible now with Brandon Hagel and Nick Paul on the wings.
Hey, man, we talked about how some of these moves could really affect the fantasy value of some of these guys. I think right there immediately, Nick Paul and Brandon Hagel immediately become a couple of targets that are probably, like you said, out there in some leagues. If teams have them, you might want to think about paying the price to acquire them, because we know the Tampa Bay Lighting are of quality. We know that they're going to be in the mix down the stretch here. I talk about it a lot. But, man, just from like an outside looking in perspective, the Tampa Bay, all of a sudden, the Floridian teams are just flexing their muscle, and their forward groups are just on paper, Steele. I'm shaking in my boots if I'm the Boston Bruins and Toronto Maple Leafs, because as much as it was, yes, a very, busy Atlantic Division, I think it's clear where the quality lies.
Yeah, and even before any of those trades happened, the fact that, they were averaging, 6 goals a game. They were scoring at an incredible pace there, and they were just getting it from up and down their lineup as well. So the fact that they can add Claude Giroux, and he's been the best player for the Philadelphia Flyers, and he's just going to add to that top line. Even Ben Chiarot, he was, being a little bit more productive offensively before he was dealt to the Panthers as well. So the fact that they were able to get this, for me, we'll get into it a little bit more for the Stanley Cup odds later in segment 3. But for me, the Florida Panthers are looking like the best team in the NHL right now.
Hey, look, we're focusing on the Atlantic right now, but we're definitely going to be talking about some West Coast action. You teased the Minnesota Wild making moves as well. We're going to talk about the Colorado Avalanche. The real thing to look at, Steele, at the end of the day is these teams are going to have to go through each other at some point, right? They are going to have to fit, and some combination we won't really know. But the awesome part is we're going to be able to watch it all unfold and really see the quality of these additions put to the test. But at the end of the day, from a fantasy side of things, which is what we're here to also do, is you can't ignore the booted value in guys like Claude Giroux, Ben Chiarot, Hagel, all these guys, Nick Paul, all of these guys immediately, even Hampus Lindholm and Mark Giordano, immediately all of those guys, fantasy value goes up. We're going to be taking a look at more fantasy value. Coming up next, we are going to be looking at some other deals from around the league as well. But I want to talk about BetOnline. It's that time of year again, and college basketball is back in a big way. For all the latest odds and contests to player props, betonline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season, and it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your supporting wagering and information needs, including live betting and all your favorite casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and all of the action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.